Hello and welcome to Hot Mama's Cool Planet, the sustainable wellness podcast where two hot, lifelong friends talk about caring for ourselves, our families, and our planet, with humor, honesty, and maybe a little ranting along the way. I'm Mer, and I live in London after spending most of my life in California and New York. I am a researcher and a storyteller. I have a passion for hair history, and I'm trying to live a healthy life here with my partner, who I call the hairy guy, and my 13-year-old daughter, who I call Godzilla. And we like to wander around London and eat delicious food. I'm here with Mishi. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Mishi, and I live in Northern California in a small bicycle riding town. I've worn many different hats. I have lived lots of different places, and I like to spend time with my 11-year-old son, and he's been away at camp this week for end of 6th grade camp, and I've missed him this week. And I also like to develop games, and I am interested in tech, the good and the bad, and I am interested in sustainability and wellness and when they come together, and that's what I like to focus on in this podcast especially. So yeah.
So today's subject is solar power, and before we started recording, we were cracking each other up by mispronouncing it like solar power.
That's not mispronouncing, that's just having our native California accents.
Like, yeah. Okay, so today we're going to talk about solar power.
Yes.
But before we get there, I'm going to put on my adult voice. And we should talk about instead, or first, our tiny pleasures for the week. Do you want to go first, Mishi?
Sure. I had a couple tiny pleasures. I went on a walk and I saw a bunny rabbit hopping with the moon and the sun behind it, and that was really cool. But I was just thinking my tiny pleasure is just happened a few minutes ago before we started recording, and we were reminding each other of, where's our brain? Where are our brains? Now we need to talk on our podcast. And we were talking about an old Pixies song, with my head in the ground and my feet in the air, I see it swimming. And so that was my tiny pleasure of remembering that song about my brain swimming somewhere else. And yeah.
You kind of just stole my tiny pleasure, because I was going to talk about this yummy croissant I had, but then I wanted to talk about solar power and just how we can have fun, like talking with funny accents at each other, and how you and I just have this habit of doing that. Like, I'm forever reminded of that time we spent like a whole entire week talking like Cookie Monster.
We did, for a whole entire week when we were in college together. Me like cookies.
Me like cookies. Me like sustainability. Me like hair. Me like solar power.
Yes.
So okay, but we have to be adulty here, and for all of our like 2 listeners out there, I'm not sure if you know who you are. Hi, Mom. Anywho, okay, so yeah, we're here to talk about solar power for realsies. And Mishi, you spent a lot of time researching the subject. What first hooked you into it?
Well, I wouldn't say a lot of time, but I've always admired solar power. I think last week in the Eco Villages, Towns and Cities episode, I talked about how I grew up in a town that had one of the early solar-powered neighborhoods. And so since I was a kid, I've thought solar power is really cool. And I also, I've had, in later years, more recently, I have co-founded a few startups. And I co-founded a startup that modeled environmental problems inside games called Green Science Games a few years ago. This is not a running startup anymore, but at that time I made one of the games that I designed and actually prototyped in Unity, and it actually ran, was a game called Solar Origami, and it was exploring outer space solar, which is something that hasn't really quite happened yet, but the idea is that you would be able to collect solar power in outer space, or not outer space, but within our solar system, up to Jupiter is where you can collect solar power, and you would be able to beam it to collector stations on Earth, and that would get around the hurdle of solar only being able to collect solar power during the day when the sun is shining, because you have these collectors out in space. So inside the game, you are on this other planet, sort of like Earth, and you're driving around with this solar collector rover, and there are these mirror devices that are beaming. You have to adjust in the game to beam the sunlight into the solar power collector, and then you have to go melt some ice formations on the planet, and do these little tasks in the game. And I had a lot of fun with that, and it's just kind of fun to move the mirrors and the reflected solar power beam and beam it down onto the planet. And
how real is that? Is that totally science fiction, or is that actually being worked on?
Oh no, they're actually, some of the first use of solar power was in outer space. Not outer, I keep saying outer space, in space. Okay. Yes. So, when you see satellites, they use solar power. And so it's not but actually beaming it down onto the planet, there's, you have to get through the atmosphere, and there's, just more complications. So people are working on it, but it hasn't actually, I don't think anyone's gotten there yet with that. But it is a feasible problem that scientists and researchers are working on. And
how interesting!
Yeah,
I would love to play that prototype. But
yeah.
Okay, so you were kind of thinking about this as it was rolling around in your head, at least as a few years ago when you were working on that other game, and then what happened?
Well, just. Recently with our podcast, I've gotten interested in sustainability again, and I wanted to, solar power is a big chunk of that, and it's an amazing source of renewable, clean energy. It's been around for about 100 years, but there was a U.S. engineer who was experimenting with engines using solar power back when they were starting to use coal and other forms of oil, and then those kind of took over for a while. But let's see, in 1941 the science fiction writer Isaac Asimov published a science fiction short story with a space station that transmits energy collected from the sun to various planets. Oh, okay. I don't know why this was in my notes. This connects to the early use of the solar power collecting from space. So, and also I think it's amazing sometimes that science fiction writers come up with science before, it actually happens. They're some of the first people to conceptualize it. So yeah, that's why I wanted to add that in there. I love science fiction.
That is cool.
I love games. I love science fiction, and I love innovation. So that's what, solar power. Okay, let me take a step back. Also, I'm interested in solar power because it's a clean, renewable form of energy. So,
of course. Yeah.
I think sometimes, you say of course, but I think sometimes we forget the why when we talk about sustainability, that we think it's just, of course, sustainability, but I think it's important to remember why are we having a climate crisis, and what could we do? Why are we saying we should do things like have sustainable energy like solar power? One of the things that people say is that it's not just about having clean air and being well, which is important aspect of renewable energy like solar power, but also that what the climate crisis is doing is disrupting agriculture. And so farmers can no longer predict when to plant their crops, and we're going to have a major food insecurity in the future. And so we're not just losing our coastlines and, those kind of concerns, but also food, basic survival is under threat. So, that's one of the reasons why I think we really need to put our attention on transitioning more to solar power. And
do you think solar power is better than, or like, how would you rank it in terms of other forms of renewable energy, like wind energy, or some would count even nuclear energy, which I'm not sure how I feel about, but I mean, like, other forms of energy that aren't fossil fuels?
It depends on where you are. So, wind energy, I think, is important in when you're in colder places with less. You're in the UK. I would say probably you definitely want to include wind energy in the equation of renewable energy.
Apparently the UK is like really up there, number one. I don't know, I should do the research, but I've heard it's a leader in wind energy, and all of the offshore windmills that you see around. They're really prevalent here. But yeah, it's not a very sunny place, so solar power, maybe it happens, but it's certainly less common here than it was when I lived in California.
Yeah, we have wind energy a little bit in California, but not so much. I think there's more wind energy off the East Coast, and although I've heard about some plants being closed under the current administration, but then they were reopened, so hopefully that continues to be researched. But yeah, solar power, the first plants were built in, some of the first really large ones were built in the Mojave Desert in between California and Nevada, where in the southwest of the United States is where it gets a lot of sun, so that's an ideal location.
So they just have like big fields full of solar panels?
They're just, they're out in the desert, and it's just it looks amazing, like just all these solar panels collecting the sun's energy. There's two main types of approaches to how these panels work. There is the photovoltaic panels, which have silicone in them, silicone cells that collect the energy, and they convert it to direct current, which is the kind of energy that we have in batteries. And then sometimes when those are installed on top of a house, it might then be converted to alternating current, the kind of energy that you use in a house. But when they're out in the desert, they might be photovoltaic, or they might be concentrated, which is, I think, how some of the earlier ones were, which was using parabolic mirrors to concentrate the energy. And sometimes they also have salt batteries next to them to store the energy overnight. So it's these massive fields. And some of I did look up some of those. Let's see, there's the solar energy generating systems is 9 power plants that were built in the 1980s in the Mojave Desert. And then there's the Ivanpah Solar Power Facility, also built in the Mojave Desert in 2014. And then there were later ones built there. So a lot of the ones in the U.S., the large solar energy plants, are built in the Mojave Desert. South Korea has a rotating solar park island. So there are limitations to, if you don't have all this land and space to build solar power, you can put it on the water and collect water.
Sure. Yeah.
Collect solar energy that way. So South Korea has been experimenting with that, and they built one that can also the solar panels can be rotated to collect the sun when it's at different angles better, and also aesthetically form different patterns, so it can go into the shape of the South Korean flag,
Oh, that's kind of cool.
or
I
also
can imagine that.
Mungangwa, the national flower. So
Oh,
into this
wow.
flower shape. So isn't that cool? Like to think like
It is.
aesthetically, you could, you know, make all these different shapes with these solar plants.
It totally makes sense because they're all like mirrors basically. So if you angle some this way and some that way, they're going to have different reflections and it's going to be, like a big, huge design, over however much space it takes up. That sounds so cool. I want to see
I
it.
know it would be cool if they did that more on the roof, on the roofs of people's houses. If you had like these cool like shapes and almost like solar sculptures on people's
Yeah.
houses.
I mean, definitely. But I guess most people only have a few up on their roofs, maybe. I don't know.
Yes. Yes, and I can talk a little bit about that because while I was living in Singapore, I didn't have any solar power when I lived there, but my dad was living here in the States and he got solar power installed on his house. And they were, at that time, they were offering discounts in California to get solar power because there is an installation cost for it, but eventually that cost is being paid off, and it's also uses a system called the True Up system, which is a little confusing, but it's basically gradually paying back that installation cost. And also, when he generates extra energy, it goes into the grid, and he donates some of that energy and gets paid back for it, if I understand it rightly. So,
I've heard that yeah, your power bill, can be negative and, you can work up. I didn't know you could donate it back to the grid, but like, yeah, I've heard that you can build up a bank of energy.
yeah, so it's this idea. I was reading this World Economic Forum from 2024 about how you can have flexible grids and prosumers. So it's you're not just consuming energy, but you're also selling back and generating your own energy from the power that you're collecting on your roof. So, so that's pretty
So
cool.
it is cool. Like, so if he got it done, a few years back, like, how quickly is it evolving? Like, are his solar panels already out of date? Or I'm just assuming, like a lot of technology, it just becomes way more efficient with time. Is that how it is?
I think the he has the photovoltaic panels which use silicon made of sand, and they are still, I think, it's up to 30 years, I think, the warranty on it. So it's still good. But
Uh-huh.
yes, it's true. There are evolutions, especially I think what people are trying to evolve is what you do with the extra power from solar. And there are ideas about coupling that power with different systems. Like once everybody gets electronic vehicles, then you could send some of that energy to be stored in people's electronic vehicles and have like a flexible grid that's monitored by AI and sort of knows like, oh, this battery needs some power, so we'll send some over here. And you could have like these roving electronic vehicles store the excess renewable energy from solar and other sources. So, it's an interesting time to see how different pieces of the puzzle could come together and be more sustainable than they would be just on their own. Although you also hear about people living off the grid with solar power, and in some parts of the world that were off the grid more to start with, people have just jumped into solar power and started using it in smaller agricultural villages. So I could.
I love the way sometimes, like, places that are somewhat less advanced have the opportunity to leapfrog when a new technology comes along that's finally more accessible. They can just like do away with the thing that all of the people
Yes.
in America, who developed it, who lived through it, like are still like suffering with the challenge of change, whereas like these other places that didn't have it in the first place, now they get to have like second, third generation stuff and like go straight into the good stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like what happened with mobile phones in some places where people didn't have enough power to have PC computers, and but they just jumped straight into mobile phones, and
Yeah, totally leapfrog. But like it seems that solar power must be less efficient, I'm thinking, since I can think of like, well, what solar powered gadgets are there? There's like calculators, but you're not going to have a car. Why does it develop enough power to power a little calculator? But it seems like you're saying with cars, we would definitely still have to plug it into the grid, whether the grid is powered by solar or whatever. But it's not like you're going to be able to stick a solar panel on your car. And
people have built solar powered cars. I've seen prototypes for them, but yeah, I think it's more efficient to collect it somewhere like on your roof, facing where the sun shines the most, and especially if you live in a place with a lot of sun. So yeah, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not a solar engineer, and like solar power is not my area of expertise. I'm just interested in the topic.
Like it's so bright and shiny.
I love the sun. So yeah. And but I did want to talk about also like the different countries around the world that are adopting solar power, because I think that's interesting also, that we were just talking about leapfrogging. So after first is China. China is, a couple years ago, was already ahead of the U.S. in terms of solar power. And then comes the U.S., and then comes India. So India is using a lot of solar power, and solar power.
They have a lot of sun, and they have a lot of agriculture. I mean, it's what they should do.
Yeah. And then comes Japan, Brazil, Germany, Spain, Australia, Italy, South Korea, Mexico, Vietnam, and so on. So it's a very efficient, very clean form of power if you are in a place where you get a substantial amount of sunlight, and if you can have the space to put it out, whether that's on the land or the sea. So yeah, what else can I tell y'all about? So the kind of advances in solar power are coupling it with other components of sustainable energy, like the batteries that I mentioned, and EV cars, AI solar regulation on the grid, and let's see. Oh, I just wanted to mention some, local things that where people have been using solar power around town. UC Davis, the campus that is in town, University of California, Davis, they have a solar power installation that I believe, now I've forgotten the exact percentage, I think it was contributing like maybe 13% of the power that the campus uses. So, or maybe it was more than that. I should have written that down. But it was something that, wasn't super small. It was like, oh, wow, this is actually helping out. And there's just down the road, there is a church, St. Martin's Church, that has a parking roof that is covered in solar power panels. Yeah. So that's one way.
Why not more of that? Why not just use these like spaces that are otherwise, why not just have like government subsidies for anybody's roof? I mean, yeah, what's going on to try to make solar power more
accessible? Yeah, so another thing that people have been doing is, instead of like each individual putting it on their roof, which can be kind of costly. First of all, in California, just even owning a home is kind of costly.
Yeah, well,
but
for sure.
You can, there are community solar farms that you can sign up for and use energy from them, so that you're getting more renewable energy. And also, I think I mentioned this in another episode. In Germany, they have developed these plug-in solar panel devices that you can just stick on your apartment balcony and lower your energy costs with those.
I love that idea. Just like a little plug-in device that, you can bring with you anywhere and have it be your own little generator, I think that's a great idea.
Yes, they need to do that in other parts of the world, so that everyone can access more renewable, cheap forms of energy, and so we can all get on the same page and do what we all should be doing. Mm-hmm. So,
have you heard of any more, future thinking, like experiments or things that you're excited to see more development of?
As far as solar power goes, I think I shared with you what I've got. Like, I think AI is, what's happening with AI is in every field interesting when you couple the capabilities of it with potential. But no, I think that's it. That's what I got for you.
Okay, well, I think our assigned listening after this episode should be to go and listen to Lorde's album from a few years ago that's called Solar Power, and she has a song on it called Solar Power, and that would probably be a good soundtrack, except for, the copyright kind of infringement. So instead, I'm just going to trust you to go on your own and listen to it. And this is not a paid advertisement, I'll have you know.
Can you sing a little of it, or is it, hard to remember?
It wasn't like her big, huge hit. So it went something like, solar power. I don't know. I really didn't do that very well, did I?
That was good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. People often mistake me for Lorde. It's just uncanny. Never has that happened. But yeah, she does have an album called Solar Power. So yeah. Anywho,
okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about future thinkings of solar power, because it is free. I mean, there's this big orb of nuclear explosion happening right out there for all of us to suck the energy from, should we desire to do so. And I feel like, that seems
it's
useful.
good for more than calculators.
That's right. By the way, since we're talking about the sun and I don't know, I've been wanting to do an episode. So all of you 2 listeners out there, let us know if I should do this episode.
I think we have maybe 10 listeners, but
yeah. 10 of you. Maybe even, I'm going to be optimistic. All 11 of you out there. Okay, so I've been thinking of doing an episode about sunscreen and sun exposure, and when it's good and when it's bad and when you need to watch out, and etc. What do you think? Is that useful? Should I do that? Should we have a whole sunshine theme going on?
I think sure, yeah, because I don't know myself. I'm like, should I use sunscreen every single day or just now and then, or those kind of stuff?
That sounds like an episode coming soon to a podcast place near you.
Okay, should we talk about what our intentions are for this week?
Yes. My intention last week was to do that little 10-minute video of workouts all the time, and I did for a few days, and then my feet, my flippers, which I have spoken about before, decided to do something excitingly painful, and so I've been a little bit waylaid for the last couple of days. So I just wanted to give you a status update on my recent intention. I failed, and I hope to get back to it at some point.
Aww.
So instead, my intention for this week is to get rid of this current desk and to get myself a new one.
Okay.
If I can get that one to-do done, I will feel really accomplished.
Is that a standing desk? Are you standing?
I am standing. So this is a normal desk, and a few months ago, I decided I needed a standing desk, and so I piled a bunch of random furniture all over this desk, and now I have all my stuff propped up on top of like a desk with like little coffee tables on it and stuff, and that's not practical. So I want to get rid of this desk and get myself a sit-stand desk, and since I'm starting work again in like another week or so, I figure this is my opportunity. This is that moment. That's my intention. I have said it. The gods have heard, and let it be so.
Yeah, you want to set yourself up good for work.
Exactly.
So.
What about you, Mishi? Do you have an intention this week?
My intention is to find a good match for my desire to be politically engaged and what my capabilities and interests are and how I want to do that. So yeah, we talked, I think, a little bit in our intentions about that before, about, whether you can call your representatives or go out and protest, and, organizations like Indivisible. And I found an organization that sounds so cool. They have a farm, and you can bring your whole family out there, and you can help immigrants. So I'm interested to explore that and see what they have to offer in terms of being a little bit more politically engaged and helpful to people who need help. So that's my intention this week.
I'm proud of you for that. I think it's important to feel like you're contributing to things going the way you believe they should go.
Yeah, because if all you do is doom scroll, then it gets really depressing. You got to take some action. So
yeah, and you reminded me to call my representative and my senators again today. I've done that 3 times in the past week, which is way more than I have in the past long time. And and every time I do it, I get kind of more and more excited to just give them a piece of my mind. Usually it's a voicemail.
Do you have like Republican representatives where you're registered? Oh, that would be more fun. Cause
it is. Yeah. So both of my senators and my representative, I am now registered as a voter in Florida. They are all Republican, and mostly it's their voicemail that answers, and I just like rant until they hang up on me because I lasted too long. And, I don't think that it counts for anything except for maybe like another tick in their box of like, she's pro this, she's anti that. But it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So, and I do think at least hearing from people and knowing this is how my constituents believe, it can't hurt. So anyway, good luck with your intention and finding a way that you feel like you can be active and heard, but also safe and true to yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and good luck with yours too, and with the wellness of your flippers and getting your desk set up in a good way for your body to be working all those hours. So, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All the support I can get, please. All right. Well, it's been a really totally awesome episode about solar power.
Solar power is really cool. Solar power
is totally cool. And thank you, our 11 listeners out there, and you too, 12. Thank you for joining us on Hot Mama's Cool Planet. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a friend, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us a review. It really helps more people find the show. Thank you. Ta.
Bye.